Joseph Sheehey is on the show this week. I need to start this conversation off as I do with many of my conversations. We tried so hard to get this done now for so long. It has been, how long has it been? How many times?
I think since November. We're sitting in February. So it's been about 4 months.
Oh my God, we did it though. I'm so proud of
Yeah,
us right now. And if people do not know who you are, why don't you give a quick rundown and then I'll tell you what I think you are.
sure. I'd love that. So I'm Joe Sheehey, the founder and CEO of Cured Nutrition. We are a supplement company of the future. That's how I like to describe ourselves.
Ooh.
And we develop functional cannabis supplements. I'm also a father, I'm a husband, and I'm on this journey of figuring out every single day what it means to live a life of impact and fulfillment and truly service. And the mission is never ending. I'm also somebody that's struggled with mental health and depression in the past, and that's really created a lot of the foundation for my story. But I'm a student at my core, student of life.
I love it. Yeah, what I would you pretty much nailed everything I was going to say other than you leave out some of your more I don't want to say the accolades that you have in your past. You definitely don't touch on those I hear very much anymore, but I'm going to pump your tires for a second because anybody who works at NASA is impressive to say the least. Anybody who works at NASA for more than any time frame, let alone 7 years, your fitness competitions, you worked on equipment that's orbiting Mars and on Mars. I mean, you are like the person to go to for human optimization. And I love that you just kind of skip over that because you are on to something new. You are on to the next mission, the next goal, the next thing that you want to execute. And you don't sit in the past and let your past define you. So I think that's what's really fantastic about you and why I've been so adamant to have you on this show. You are the definition of what it means to keep pushing forward. In saying that, there's a lot to get into with you here, but first I want to start a little bit, take me back to why Cured became a thing in your life, why you felt that you needed to live a different life of purpose rather than continuing to create incredible things on Mars.
Yeah, thank you for that. I like to lead. I mentor other entrepreneurs as well, and I always like to lead my mentorship with them with the question, tell me why you do what you do, don't tell me what you do. And I think that that's a very important it's very important to differentiate the two. And why I do what I do is because of the components of the journey that you touched on. So before getting into being an aerospace engineer and working on NASA projects through Lockheed Martin, I found myself in the darkest place of my life. In April 2012, it was 2:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, and I found myself coming out of a blackout. I was blinking my eyes, looking around, and my reality was coming into focus. I had climbed over a guardrail of a bridge, and I was standing on the edge of the bridge with my feet hanging off the bridge, recognizing that I was ready to end my life. And as I mentioned, I was coming out of a blackout. So I had been drinking that night. I had also been on at the time on this social anxiety medication that in combination with alcohol made me black out. And so just goes to show you that I was still making very poor decisions. I was trying to work on my mental health. I was seeing a psychiatrist, was starting to understand this voice in my head and this never ending anxiety that I felt my entire life. But the truth was, I was just trying to escape in my college years. I was surrounding myself with not bad people, but the decisions that I made by surrounding myself with those people were extremely destructive. And there was this huge dichotomy. There was this person that grew up focused on health and fitness and played sports and really wanted to take care of his physical body and was pursuing being an engineer and, get the job and do the supposed tos of our society. And then there was also me that was like, I'm not really sure who I am. I'm not sure why I hate myself, but I know that I hate myself and I feel very awkward in social situations and I numb 5 out of 7 days a week. And that dissonance between those two people caused so much anxiety and ultimately led to depression. And when I awoke, came out of that blackout and realized it led to depression, but also led to me almost ending my life. And that night there was somebody under the bridge. What that man was doing underneath the bridge at 2:30 a.m. on Tuesday morning. I have no explanation besides he was my angel. His name's Ben. I saved
I was going to say, have you contacted him?
I contacted him after. So he put his phone number in my phone that night, texted himself, and then ended up texting me the next day. That next day, I was taken to the hospital. After getting pulled over the bridge, I took a handful of Xanax and woke up the next day. And the next day I was in the hospital and I saw my parents standing over me. And, I was in and out and wasn't like blacked out that entire time, but in the hospital bed, as my parents stood over me, I was under, 24-hour watch. The doctor asks, Joe, we're gonna run some tests, and I just want to know if there's anything that you think we'll find in your system, trying to understand what I've been doing. And the truth was, the better question was like, what weren't you going to find in my system? Xanax, painkillers, ecstasy, cocaine, all the drugs that were the party drugs at the time in college. I just listed all of those off, and I saw my parents standing above me. And when I saw the life just get sucked out of my mom and my dad's eyes and really just out of their entire body, that's a feeling and an experience that's very hard to describe. It's very hard to describe, but it is life-changing, because what I saw was my parents saw that not only had they almost lost their son, but their son had completely lost himself. And my parents ended up pulling me out of, I was going to school in Boulder, Colorado at the time. I was in my first senior year, because it took me 5 years to graduate. But I was in my first senior year, and my parents like, you got to get out of Boulder. You can't be in this environment. And it took them a little while to completely pull me out of Boulder. In the weeks afterwards, I was put on antidepressants, and I still continued to drink. And it was really, really dark. And as my parents pulled me out of Boulder, I became extremely lonely. I had no friends. I wasn't around this group of people that I was going to college with. And as I had worked so hard to get to that point in my career, I was really on the doorstep of getting my engineering job, but I was also living this extremely, extremely destructive life. And the only way for me actually to graduate and pursue the career that I had been pursuing was to just be in a completely new place. And my parents knew that. And so my 5th year of school, I was interning at Lockheed Martin, and I was driving up to Boulder every day to finish my senior design project. And it was like this 2.5-hour loop drive that I did every single day. And thankfully, finally really got myself together and graduated and got the job. And at the time had also found the bodybuilding world and started to pour myself completely into fitness, because I needed to pour my energy and focus into something. I was so lonely.
Hey humans, this episode of the Brass and Unity podcast is sponsored by CURED Nutrition. I want to talk to you guys about sleep. We all know that sleep is one of the most important tools when getting your life together and optimizing your wellness and general well-being. CURED Sleep Bundle, which combines their best-selling Zen and most potent CBN, is the answer to guaranteeing that you'll get a full night of sleep every single night. Zen is a blend of functional mushrooms, adaptogens, and full-spectrum cannabinoids. The CBN extract is a lesser-known cannabinoid found in the hemp plant, but these supplements were designed to support the two most critical stages of your body's natural sleep cycle: REM sleep and non-REM, deep sleep. CURED's raw CBN oil contains 30 milligrams of CBD and 5 milligrams of CBN. Together, the CBD and CBN create a synergistic whole body effect. When it kicks in, you'll notice every inch of your body soften into a deeper state of relaxation, as if you're laying beneath the comfort of a weighted blanket. Once you're asleep, Zen is there to ensure that your body is successfully cycling out of non-REM, deep sleep, into REM, and back again. Some people can't fall asleep, others can't stay asleep, and then those that just fall asleep, stay asleep, but struggle to spend enough time in each sleep stage. No matter what is keeping you from your true rest and restoration, the Sleep Bundle is your solution. Think of it as the 1-2 punch for the body and brain reset. So I've been struggling with sleep for a little while now. dealing with TBI and other ailments. But I'm telling you right now, this stuff is legit. It gets me to sleep. It keeps me asleep. And I don't wake up feeling groggy. I don't have any of the side effects that any other type of medication or CBD product that sometimes happen. I've also been able to focus a lot more on what my body needs because I'm able to get into a deeper sleep. This stuff is amazing, guys, and I want you to go give it a shot. Cured is giving all of our listeners 20% off. So you can go and grab it at curednutrition.com/brass and check out. That's right, Cured Nutrition, CURED nutrition.com/brass, and get an extra 20% off. Improve your sleep. It'll improve your life.
I felt like I had a lack of direction, even though I did end up getting that job and ultimately working on those NASA projects. But bodybuilding was the thing that I found. And I said, I can pour all my energy into it. I can actually truly start to understand like what I'm fully capable of from a physical perspective. And bodybuilding truly saved me. Bodybuilding truly saved me in the beginning until it didn't. So I spent 6 years, 7 years working in my engineering job. And most of those years, I was a competitive bodybuilder. And I say it saved me until it didn't, because the truth was, while it took my focus at first, there was a point at which it turned into steroids and it turned into this negative self-image that couldn't go away, even though I was, 4 or 5% body fat. And it's just like this, it's just so confusing because it saves a lot of people, but then it becomes the thing that saves you ultimately becomes like this thing that could potentially kill you as well. And so it was like this repeating pattern. But that 7 years later into my engineering career, as I was bodybuilding and creating a community in the health and fitness industry, I had started my own podcast. And I was just interested because I was noticing that a lot of people in the space had similar stories. There was something painful. They went through something dark, and then they said, I'm going to do whatever I can to change this physical body because maybe that will make me feel better. Maybe that will make me feel better.
The other thing I hear, sorry to interrupt, the other thing I hear from individuals who get into that space very often is, and this is from a female perspective, I've been hurt once when I was small and couldn't protect myself, and I will never be in that position again.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And it's putting yourself in what you believe to be a position of control, but it's really like this false sense of control and this false identity. And I mentioned this to some people, like in the bodybuilding world, it's really important to understand what you value. And when you're in the bodybuilding world, what I recognize is that many people, while maybe it wasn't intentional, a lot of us, I'll speak for myself, valued attention because we valued the fact that we had this physical body that people were like, ooh, like, how'd you get that? And it also was still very empty.
Right.
So 6 years, almost 7 years into my engineering career, I was podcasting, talking to people in the health and fitness space and having conversations to start to understand people and why they were on this journey. And I spent a decent amount of time sober, but as I did mention, bodybuilding led to steroids, and then anxiety followed me the entire time. And while I'm in Colorado, marijuana was legalized here, and I became very interested in the potential of marijuana. While I had used it prior in my life, I had used it in combination with all these other drugs and alcohol, which was like this escapism. So I kind of like lumped everything together. I was like, oh, it's all potentially bad. And I think that's what society does, is we lump everything together. That's why the DARE program says heroin's no different than marijuana. And that's why we say
insane.
Right?
That's insane.
Right? It's completely insane. And then also, alcohol, like alcohol ultimately was mostly the contributor that led me to the edge of that bridge. While I was taking a bunch of other drugs and escaping, it was ultimately alcohol. I was drinking and taking my anxiety medications that made me black out. And what's actually true for me is my cousin died when he was 18 from an from alcohol. Basically, he was in the back seat of a 2-door car.
Oh,
The person driving the car was drunk. They crashed into a river. He was in the back seat. He broke his neck.
yeah,
The driver and the passenger were able to get out. They couldn't get him out of the river.
yeah,
And that had happened before I had gone off to college, and I had that heartache and understanding how destructive alcohol was. Alcohol also killed my uncle. He was an extreme alcoholic. He had throat cancer. He survived it, went back to drinking. It ultimately killed him and left behind my cousin, who's a very, very young little girl. And my
yeah,
grandpa also died from alcohol. So alcoholism and like that addictive genetic personality, whatever you want to call
yeah,
it, like it's deeply ingrained in me.
yeah.
And I saw all that. I saw the destruction that it caused in my mom's life. I saw the destruction that it caused in my life. And then I just really started to question. I was like, why is this so normalized, yet so destructive?
Right.
And I couldn't understand that answer. And as I was podcasting and really starting to understand people's story in the health and fitness space, they had started to see me share on my social media that I was using CBD, I was using other cannabinoids to
Mhm.
help me calm down and help me fall asleep and ultimately help me recover. And we would podcast, and then outside of the podcast, they would say, "Hey, Joe, like, what are you doing with like this cannabis stuff?" And I was like, "Why aren't
Right.
we talking about this publicly? Like,
Right.
why aren't we having this conversation where more people can hear this conversation?" And that was ultimately like this energy that I was feeling. It was building. I was like, okay, there's something here. People are interested. It's helping me. I know it can help other people. I know cannabis is branded very poorly because everybody thinks Cheech and Chong. They think, whatever propaganda that's
Yeah.
been portrayed for 100 years. Ultimately, there was one day where my boss just completely belittled me. I was like,
Mm.
fuck this dude. Like I was at the point where I had this feeling that I could do something else. I had this desire. I was having these conversations. I feel like I could help somebody tangibly. And I ultimately was like, I'm stuck going to the cubicle, punching the numbers, doing the thing. And I started to feel very depressed again. And having had understood what that was like prior in my life, I was like, it's happening again. Like there's a
Mhm.
desire for me to be something. And then there's the person that I actually am.
Hey, humans. I know you've all been seeing me drink HVMN's Ketone IQ lately. This is a game changer. Jet fuel in a bottle. I use Ketone IQ for everything in my life, whether it's running, cycling, podcasting, or just the extra boost that my brain needs. I won't lie, it helps push me to the next level in all things. I love Ketone IQ and what HVMN stands for. Go grab some shots today at hvmn.com and use the code BRASS20 and save.
And that, like, I like recognized that, and I ended up seeing a therapist, employee services therapist, and I shared this literally whole like similar story to him, and he goes, Joe, I'm going to give you something, and I don't think you're going to come back as a client, but like I just need to give this to you. And he turns to his desk and he pulls out a card and he writes something on it and he hands it to me, and I go, what is this? And I flip it over. It was his business card. I flip it over. On the back, he just wrote permission. He goes, Joe, you're looking
Oh,
for permission from everybody in the outside world,
yeah.
but you just need to give it to yourself. And I said, fuck, like, you're right. I'm looking for it somewhere outside of myself. That night, I put in my letter of resignation. The next day, I woke up and I was like, well, I have this idea. I don't have a job. I have like maybe 3 months worth of cash. And that's where Cured came from. Like that's where my business came from. But it was just this like ups and downs and trials and tribulations. And those continue to come up while building the business. But that's ultimately how I became the person that I am today. And what I didn't mention was I got really far in bodybuilding. I was a national level, national level competitor, and obviously, worked on amazing projects through NASA. I worked on a project called Maven, Insight, Juno. Juno's a Jupiter,
Mm-hmm.
Insight's the Mars lander, Maven is a Mars orbiter. And I would tell people those stories and like, that's so cool. Like, why aren't you more excited about that? And it was ultimately like, I felt so empty on the inside,
Right.
even though it was very cool. But that's how I ultimately got to um, this pursuit that I'm on now with Cured. And Cured is now 5.5 years old. And we're here to help people. We're here to change the narrative and we're here to help people.
What I love the most about your story, and the reason why I wanted you to tell it so that I didn't have to tell it for others, is because you go through so much of what every other person struggling internally, not listening to their intuition, having things happen in their life, and just sitting with it and allowing it to destroy them. And somehow, by the grace of God, that person, the human, whatever, there's always these moments, these pinpoint moments where you can look back, if you are lucky enough to make it to the next stage in your life alive. There's these pinpoint moments that I feel like you survived for a reason, and it is, you need to tell that story, because so many people will look at your past and look at your accolades and look at your achievements and go, this guy had it made. This guy was a smart dude, went to school, great mom and dad, parents still together. You know, you had it made, you had it dialed. What does he have to be so sad about? What does he have to be so depressed about? Dude, the amount of times I've told my story and had people look at me and go, oh, I had no idea. It's like, because we don't, it didn't matter then. It also didn't help anybody then to complain about my life or just go on about it. It's like, I was given the opportunity to move forward. I took the opportunity to move forward. And this is now what my life's mission is like to never let anybody ever feel like they didn't, that they're alone, that struggle is not normal, that it's not real, that it doesn't happen to successful people. The most people that I talk to that are successful in anything on any level, and I mean, I've had, everyday level to Pulitzer Prize winners. And I'm telling you, the same story is always there. There's a struggle. There's a point in time where you can choose to go left or you can choose to go right. And that is up to you and what you do with that. And it's called taking responsibility for your actions. And that's what you do when you tell this story. You take responsibility for the things that have happened to you, but you do not allow those things to define you. And that is what I love about your story so much. You can have amazing things, but life doesn't mean it's always perfect. It's always great. It's the social media, like, oh my God, life is so wonderful. It's like, well, meanwhile, I'm dying inside and nobody realizes. It's like, just talk about it. Talk about how it can be difficult. But I love so much that you got to that point, though, where you gave yourself permission and it happened to go in a direction towards plant-based medicine. And it just happened to be the thing that is going to change, in my opinion, change and save humanity if we allow it to. And I say that in a very non-condescending term, but we all understand that legislation is what dictates our lives, which is a really sad fact. And that could mean medicines, that could mean curing people, healing people. And when you have governments that don't allow that, eventually the tides will turn as society learns its own way. And we're seeing that now with Australia, with psilocybin and MDMA. We're seeing that in the States with psilocybin. We're seeing that in Canada soon to come. I have some interesting information about that soon. So psilocybin, MDMA, the way we look at healing is no longer this take a pill, go live your life. I think we had 40 to 50 years of allowing the pharmaceutical companies and these massive corporations to say, you can eat like shit, you're going to walk like shit. When you feel like shit, we're going to give you another pill to keep you feeling like shit. And I think enough of us have woken up and said, this is unacceptable. We're not doing this anymore. And you do not get to dictate what I put in my body, my mind, and my soul. And I think that's what's great about Cured. I found out about you through Chase. So many, it's so funny because Chase has been a great human being, a great resource. He'll just send me emails and he'll be like, hey, these are some people I really think you need to talk with. And I'm like, oh, thanks, man. Just completely unprompted, takes time out of his day. He's so good at that. You know what? There's something special about when you find people like that. You need to hold on to people like that because most people don't care enough to say your name in the room of important people. And when you find the people that do, those are the guys you high five and you ride that wave with and you take everywhere with you. And so when he brought you up to me and I got in contact, I was really excited. And I was so fortunate you guys sent me out an awesome package. These are filler pills. I've used all of these already. So I'm just going to say these are like,
well, we need to send you another one. What are we doing?
I know. Well, no worries. I do love them. I want to talk about really what is in these products and what's behind them, because I am on this journey of, I have been for a few years now. I've been pretty open about it, about psychedelics and self-discovery and self-work. I've always been doing the work since 2009, but it's been very different work once you find out you have a TBI and how you need to address it and the things that need to be done. And the one thing that saved me from the pharmaceutical company was cannabis.
Hmm.
I started with cannabis when I was pregnant. Talk about having to have that conversation while it's still illegal in Canada, while pregnant, to your in-laws who are half Jewish.
That's a
It's
difficult
a
one.
it's a hard conversation, but it was a conversation I'm very proud that I finally did take the permission from myself to go forward and say, look, this is what's healing me. I'm now off of pharmaceutical medication to an extent, and then taking it to the next step. And so I appreciate people who take cannabis seriously as a master plant and as something that can and will heal people if it is done in the right set and setting. And I think that's what your supplements do. So can we get
Yeah.
into, CBD versus CBN and human optimization and how you ultimately landed on these products?
Yeah. 100%. I think a very important word is reverence, like treating these plants, cannabis, psilocybin, fungi, whatever it is you want to talk about, just treating them with reverence because they are very powerful. And if they're not used correctly, then we don't win this battle. Like
Right.
we don't get to have a future that looks different than the past. And if the educations and the conversations aren't there and they're not done very intentionally, then we don't get to have a different future. And so reverence is very important to me, and the understanding of let's be fully educated, understand what it is we're talking about, and then approach this in a very intentional way. And that's how we approached building our company. My business partner and I actually met in engineering school. So we're both engineers, and we both took this approach of we want to create the highest quality, with the best quality control and the most intentionally crafted supplements that we possibly could. And we came at it from two very different perspectives. He's an engineer as well, but he went more into the cannabis space and was a cultivator and grower for a while. And I went into the health and fitness space. And so if we could take both of our paths and bring it back together and say, well, this is what you need to optimize your life. This is how health and fitness professionals say, hey, I'm going to approach life. And then he says, okay, well, this is the power of the plant. And these are the cannabinoids that we can use. And then we also understand all the other ingredients. So what we did was when we started the company, and it's become much more clear, but as you first start a company, you're like, how do we make money? And then you start
Right.
you iterate and like it gets better and better. But we knew that humans struggle with a handful of problems. Obviously, there's a lot of problems, but when it comes down to it, we struggle to concentrate. We struggle to focus. We struggle to get through the stress that this world and this life gives us. And then a lot of us struggle to sleep. And so we really focus on like those categories. It's like if we can sleep well, if we can reduce our stress well, and if we can be able to sit down and actually be able to lock in and focus on something that at hand and have mental clarity, then most likely we're going to get stuff done. We're going to pursue our passion and our purpose, and then we're going to be able to press the reset button and do it again. So we set out to create products that focus on those areas. And we knew that cannabinoids themselves, as it is today, and as we're still at the doorstep of understanding the whole plant, may not be the only ingredient that's required to create those functions. And we also said, well, we're not the experts on understanding what we can actually do with other potential ingredients. And before starting CURED, I had been microdosing for about 6 months. I was very, very profoundly impacted by the ability to use psilocybin at a microdose. And I was like, well, we're not going to be able to do that right now, but how could we lay the groundwork for a future that normalizes all of these things? And so we started with CBD, and we started with functional mushrooms, and we started with adaptogens. And we said we want to utilize all of these ingredients in a way that creates a very specific function to hit those targeted problems that I mentioned. And so we actually hired very early on a clinical herbalist to do all of our formulations. We're not the experts on it, but the clinical herbalists and those individuals that are trained in traditional Chinese medicine and herbalism, those are the people that you want creating the products. And we hired, her name's Callie Simpson. She's out of Boulder, Colorado. If you try to go steal her from us, I'll be very frustrated, but I got to give her credit. So Callie Simpson out of Boulder, Colorado, she's incredible. And she created these formulas for us where we took functional mushrooms, we took adaptogens, and we took specific cannabinoids, and we created very specific functions. So I saw you had in front of you Rise,
I
which
have
is our
Rise.
nootropic. Yep.
Yes, I have
And then
Rise, Zen, and I have their nightcaps.
yeah. So Rise and Zen both have that combination. Rise is for uplifting mental clarity. It's a nootropic. It pairs really well with microdose psilocybin. I'll just add that in there. There's not psilocybin in there, but we created that very intentionally because that's the future that we see. So Callie helped us with those formulations. She helped us with Zen. Zen is for relaxation and calming. We use reishi, ashwagandha, valerian, passion flower, CBD, and magnesium in that one. And the thing is that it's very important to understand how we formulated these products because it's not like let's throw the kitchen sink at it and say all of these ingredients are trending and popular, people are going to buy them. While that does work from a marketing and sales perspective because people see that they're popular, see that there's conversation around them, ultimately that's not serving the customer to your ultimate ability because you're not looking at things like what are the contraindications, how do these work together, what else are people doing in their lives where, you know, Callie always says this. My business partner, Taylor, he's got red hair. She goes, he's fiery. He needs to take herbs differently than you need to take them because he's already fiery. And so, from an herbalism perspective, you have to understand those things. And that's why we hired her. And so, you know, like you look at our supplements on Rise, it says take 1 to 3. Very infrequently will you see that. People ask us, like, what do you mean take 1 to 3? Well, it depends on who you are. You could take 1 and you might feel that it's fully effective for you. I need to take 3 because I need a little bit more of that uplifting component. So I'll just say that like we approached it with from a traditional Chinese medicine or herbalistic perspective with a clinical herbalist from Boulder, Colorado, and created these formulations so that they would be most able to serve the greater population. She works one-on-one with clients. You know, somebody will come to her and they say, I'm struggling with whatever it is. And she'll say, okay, well, we need more of these warming herbs. We need more of these cooling herbs or, you know, wet or dry. Like those are things that you say in herbalism. And I didn't know those things. And so that's why we hired the person that actually knew how to do it. And again, we just target very specific root problems. Like we have to be able to sleep. If we can't press our reset button, then, well, your mood's going to be off. Your ability to handle stress is going to be off. Your ability to be able to sit down and be focused is off. So we've expanded from like those like 3 pillars, but ultimately that's what we're trying to do is like, what are the things that humans struggle with? How can we support them? And how can we do it with a very intentional way, utilizing an expert to help create those formulations?
It's some of the things you kind of touch on there. I just want to really highlight because I think a lot of people want to sleep. I think people think that, oh, I can have 4 to 6 hours of sleep and that's good. That's where everything goes wrong. I have learned now over the past handful of years going through TBI, watching my husband fade away, to me being diagnosed, to us understanding sleep to the fullest extent that we can. And I will tell you, from a psychiatrist who has treated me for 10 years to the Doc G and Doc Eisenman, if you're not sleeping, every single thing in your life will fall. And it's not like, oh, I'm sleeping 9 hours, but how much are you actually in deep sleep? How much are you in REM? How much are you awake? Those are things that you need to look at. I don't wear a Whoop strap. I don't wear any of that, but my Apple Watch does help me with that. I check my HRV constantly. It's on there. I'm a person who wakes up, checks how I feel, does a scan head to toe. Then I check my numbers and I check my sleep to see if it matches up with how I'm feeling. Because so quickly we look at numbers to tell us how we're feeling, but we need to give ourselves a hot minute to do the scan and go, you know what? I actually don't sleep that bad. I actually feel pretty good. Body feels rested. Brain feels, you know what? I'm here. I'm cognitively here. I don't feel foggy. I don't feel fatigue. Then there's days you wake up where I feel super fatigued. I go, okay, this is going to be it's going to be a day. We're going to get through it. But then I look at my watch and it goes, well, you've slept 9 hours, but you've had 7 minutes of deep sleep. Oh, okay, that's a problem. And it allows me to pinpoint what's happening. Sleep will be the reason why things go haywire. And the reason I bring that up and I'm trying to highlight that is because I have a ton of friends who are entrepreneurs that are going to be listening to this, a ton of people who are like, go, 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 go. Like, I can sleep 4 hours a night. I'm good on that. You can't. I'm sorry. If any of you have ever listened to Joe Rogan, he's at a specialist on, he talks about it. He's like, can you really sleep? And he's like, no, you can't function after 4 hours. It's like, I don't care what anybody says. That's just not, if you look at the research, it's not reality. You can tell
It's
yourself
very false. It's very
it's
false.
a big lie to yourself.
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with mental health. And if you have other external stressors that are on top of your body, I always recommend trying to figure out how to dampen those down before taking anything. And then I always say, if you have gotten yourself to the point where you're moving enough every day, you're drinking enough water every day, and you do the sleep hygiene, which no one does, it feels like, and you get the right amount of sun in the morning and you get your body moving and you stay away from caffeine for 90 minutes and it's still something's going on, then go get your blood work checked. Then find out what's going on under the hood. And then if you're like, okay, we know what we're missing, then you integrate awesome things in. Because
Then you
then
go to
you know where to
supplements.
start. You know where to start. I'm not getting enough magnesium. Perfect. You know what's got magnesium? All of these. Let's start
Yeah.
talking about how I can get more magnesium. So I'm always really quick to start that conversation with like, you cannot band-aid things. Sleep, if you don't have it, you will eventually fall off. That's just the reality. And the sooner you address the outside external stressors going on in your life, and if you, even if you can't eliminate them, it's about management, right? It's about how do you manage task to task so that you're not overwhelmed. And moreover, nutrition. Oh my God. Oh my God. America's new food pyramid. So
What a
much
joke.
anxiety when I read that.
Yeah.
My point in saying that is not to make poke fun at America's food pyramid. Canada's no different, but I'm saying that because if you can eat properly and get the dyes and the processed, and you just eat from outside the grocery store instead of inside the grocery store, a lot of these things will get better. And then when you couple that with proper sleep, with your lovely sleep caps, it's a different game. It's a different thing.
Yeah. One of the things that you're saying, and I always lead with this, it's so important. I say we're a functional cannabis supplement company. And I say we're a supplement company. And I always say this, I always say supplements are supplemental to a lifestyle of healthy habits and routines. But if you're not focusing on those habits and routines, then you can never come to us and expect that we're going to solve your problem. And that's been something that's really important for us, because part of my path was going through the physical transformation, understanding how I have to fuel my body, understanding how I have to move my body. And that was like, okay, well, I understand what discipline is required to do that. I understand how, like, okay, you got to do these things first before you head to the next modality. And the thing that's so important is that we have, whether it's been good for the company or not, we've always led with that. We've led with education, and like we put all the focus into our blog, our podcast, all of our educational platforms to say, here are the things that you should be doing. That's how we lead all of our marketing. It's very infrequently product focused, and it's very frequently, what can you do with your human body for very low cost additional inputs, like you know, the cold exposures and whatever it is. But like, since day one, we've said we want to be the company that sets an example, that doesn't just push the product. We say we're supplemental to all of these things, and then ultimately just say that for us to change the narrative around cannabis without including those other components of education that I'm talking about, then I don't understand how we're actually really different than the Cheech and Chong stoner mentality. Like, we have to change that. So we have to be the ones that can say, I am somebody that's extremely responsible. I am somebody that works very hard. I am somebody that shows up as a parent, as a father, as a husband, as a friend, as a whatever it is. I do all of these things, and I use cannabis, like, and I do this, because that, like, all of those components were missing. It's like cannabis, couch, Cheech and Chong, chips. Like that's like the story, or, you know, the DARE program, whatever you want to call it. But that narrative, while it can be true for some people, because some people still use cannabis to escape, I'm not going to look over that part.
Oh yeah, it
It's not
happens.
true. It's
But it's
not
no,
true for the masses, right?
but that's true though. You can sit here and pretend like all of us are all holier than now, but the reality is people are still going to find a tool, uh anything to make them escape the difficulties of life. And that could be alcohol, could be cannabis, it could be social media. It
Yep.
could be, being on a screen 24/7, living in a box, never going outside, never moving your body. These things are all tools. I love the Logan says this. It's my favorite. He goes, a hammer is still a tool, but if you hit yourself in the dick with it, do you know what I mean? These are tools, but it's how you choose to use them.
That's so good. It's
Oh,
true.
it's the
It's
best. I
true.
love that so much.
Uh,
But it's
yeah.
the reality is you can use everything as a tool, but if I guess the hard part is you have to get others to see it as that. And you're in a whole new re-education. And fortunately, it feels like a subset of the universe is like, okay, maybe this is time. Between the UFOs coming, we got the cannabis coming, we got the psilocybin. It's like, let it all happen. Let it all
Hmm.
happen. Right. And
Hmm.
we're grown adults. We need to start acting accordingly and start realizing that we can take ownership of the meat sacks that we walk around in, and no one
Hmm.
else can determine how I'm going to feel based off of a law. I'm not saying do things illegally, but I'm saying I utilize peptides. I utilize psilocybin. I utilize ayahuasca. I utilize cannabis. I utilize the tools at my disposal because they're accessible. It's like, what do you want to risk though to get better? And for
Hmm.
me, when I was really bad, I was willing and still risk everything.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's our responsibility, is to be super clear on what we're willing to risk to get the life that it is that we want. And of course, that's got to be super clear. I'm not willing to risk my family. I'm not willing to risk things that are near and dear to me, but I am willing to risk my last career. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I supposed to be talking about this stuff when I was in that career? No, like absolutely not. I was
No.
not going to be able to go back to that career.
Yeah.
Like when I said I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I started talking openly about psilocybin and cannabis, like, well,
You
good
burn the
luck
boats,
trying to ever
bro.
work for the government again. Like that's not happening.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it all depends on what it is what you're willing to put in, or what you're willing to let go of or risk
Mm-hmm.
to create the life that it is that you believe in, that you believe is actually possible for you and that you truly deserve. I mean, like you nailed on this so many times that I think it's worth saying one more time in a slightly different way. Like there's this book, it's called Awareness by Anthony DeMello. Have you ever read that?
I haven't read it, but I know of it.
So in the book, he goes, when you're a kid, if you were told that you were okay, as in like something happened to you and you actually weren't okay, but you were told by a figure, a parent, whatever it was, you're okay. Don't be surprised later in life when you find yourself afraid when somebody tells you you're supposed to be afraid. So it's
Mm.
conditioning. Like if you're told at a very young age you're okay when you're not actually okay, it's okay to not be okay. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we got to understand that. But the awareness piece of it was like, don't be surprised when later in your life somebody tells you you're supposed to feel a certain way and you feel that way. And that's all narrative and conditioning, and that's the world that we live in. I mean, we can
Mm-hmm.
all look at the last several years and be like, hey, this is what we're being told we're supposed to feel. Is that what you feel? And
No.
if you don't have that awareness, like it's very unfortunate, and it hurts my heart. But like
Mm-hmm.
when you don't risk everything for the life that it is you want, it's very hard to escape that narrative that's creating the feelings that you feel, that's then making you take actions that ultimately weren't your own. You weren't in control of those actions. And that's the world that we live in. So
That
I
brings
just
you to
wanted to reiterate that.
No, I love it. And it brings you to that conversation of free will, right? That's a really hard one. It's like, you're really starting to dive into something different when you go, do you even have free will? What is free will? And if we do have it, what does it look like? Who
Mm-hmm.
influences it? And I don't believe that we truly actually have free will to an extent. I think we do over body autonomy at some point. There's an aspect of free will, but if you live anywhere but in the woods all of the time, how much are you able to do that? I mean, you're
Yeah.
influenced everywhere you turn with screens and the pace of everything. So it's like, but for me, I wonder, like, reiterate, like, when I say I was willing to lose everything, I meant it, because I wasn't a healthy mom. I wasn't a healthy wife. I wasn't good to be around. The PTS had taken over my life. The TBI stuff was undiagnosed. And I was like, I was collapsing all the way to 2019. I was still suicidal. Right. And you can go from 2009 to 2019 where great life, awesome, like, what do I have to complain about? But it's the things that live in your head, and mental health does not discriminate. And so for me, it was like, we're gonna blow the roof off this thing, and whatever happens happens. But if we come out the other side to the light, at least we know mommy's gonna be here, Kelsey's gonna be here. I'm gonna be able to be a partner. I'm gonna be able to be an example. I'm gonna be able to be a leader. And when my son goes, mommy, where are you going? Like last year, pretty open with our son. He's almost 7 years old, very open with our son. And he goes, mommy, where are you going? I said, mommy's going to the jungle. What are you doing in the jungle? Mommy's going to sit with some medicine that's going to make her feel better, so that when I come home, I can be more present with you. And so he went to his teacher. Mommy's going to the jungle to sit with the medicine. And so we have these conversations openly with teachers, and we say, I utilize psychedelics. This is what they do for me. Da, 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 da. Here's the and I even bring peer reviewed research with me. I'm like, here you go. And they almost every time go, that's amazing. I love that. Because instead of seeing, like we see at my son's school very often, parents spoon feeding, no joke, pouring M&Ms into their hands and shoving it into the child's mouth. Instead of doing that, we're sitting down and having the conversation why mommy has little fires at night in the garage. We're talking about why mommy goes to crazy places and takes amazing photos and does these things. Like, you have the open dialogue so that no one is left out of it. The healing journey, if you are a spouse or a parent, you owe it to them and those around you to burn it to the fucking ground, to go to the ends of the earth, to find ways so that you can show up. And if that meant on my way there, I got arrested because I was going to do something I legally wasn't allowed to do, so be it. Because the reward on the other end of that was so much greater, so much more impactful than, okay, well, we'll get into some trouble. We'll call the media. We'll make it a thing. Maybe I'll write a book about it. Fuck it. Who cares? Because on the other end of it, I'm going to come out stronger. I'm going to come out with light. I'm going to come out and be the mom that I know I could. And that's what happened. So it's not that I wasn't willing to risk my family. On some level, we had no choice, because I just wouldn't be here anymore to be a part of the family if we didn't risk everything to go and do it. And it's worth it.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever heard Ed Milet say this, but Ed Milet, he goes, there's a point at which your child starts to question the things that you say. And so over the course of your life, you say, honey, you can be anything that you want to be. But there's a point at which the child understands that they can ask, well, mommy or daddy, why aren't you? And it's like, oh, like, you can't say you can be anything you want to be unless you're the actual example of that. Because there's a point at which your kid, your child, whoever it is, starts to actually be able to ask that question. When I heard him say that, I was like, oh, yeah, like, that is so, so, so potent. And it just hits you at your core.
Yep.
And one of the other things that you said that I think is really important is that I actually recorded a podcast on this recently. And it was just, I said, this is my truth about cannabis. And I just like, I just rambled for almost an hour on it. And one of the things that I said was, people say that cannabis is a gateway drug, but I think unless we actually understand why they believe that that's the case, I think we've got it all wrong. Because here's the truth. When you keep something in the dark, when you make it elusive, when you make something off limits, whenever that person goes to explore those things, they ultimately think they're a bad person because they've been made elusive. They've been put in the dark. So then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that you are a bad person. Well, let's get this stuff out of the dark. Like, you're not a bad person. It's all narrative. And so, of course, people start to think that they're bad. I made a bad decision. Society tells me I'm bad. My parents think I'm bad. And then what do? you make more bad decisions. And then it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. So this idea that cannabis is a gateway drug, I think the problem is that we've put it in the dark. We've made it elusive. We're not open about the things that actually help. And it's like extremely honorable and noble for you to do what you do, to put everything in the light, to say, hey, this is what I do. This is why I'm doing it. This is the person that I'm becoming because of using these modalities. And then you're fully 100% transparent. And then future generations don't think they're bad because something was put in the dark and we said that it was bad. Like, that's the problem. It's all a story.
It is. It's the back to the free will again. What story are you
100%.
telling? What story are you telling? And I refuse to put another human on the face of this earth in the way that this earth is. And I'm not talking environmental. Don't even get me going on that. That's where I'm at with that. I, you know, my son is the kid who, when another kid walks in front of him and drops a piece of garbage, he picks it up and goes, hey, you dropped something. Like, because we don't do that. We don't act that way, act accordingly. What I'm trying to say in that is, it's the, like you said, it's the narrative you tell your children. It's the narrative you tell those around you. And it's not just the narrative you tell yourself, right? Because I live this, it's silly. And I started doing this over the past handful of years. And it may sound vain to some, but it's honest to God. Sometimes when you need accountability, it works. I pretend as if somebody is watching me all the time. And I mean, my bros are, because trust right now, like, if you think that I got to this space where I am and what's about to blow on my own, and not my homies on the other side, move them motherfuckers out of the way and just being like, nope, this is for her. This is her time now. Just kicking me through doors. If you don't think that's for real, I don't know what to tell you, but I'm telling you right now, I did not do this on my own. I did not do this in my own fruition. I think people have been there on the other side, and whatever you want to believe, this is not of my own doing. This is what I wanted. I put it out there, and there was enough belief around me that it forward momentum. So that's the same with being a parent, man. That's the same with being a spouse. It's no different. If you act as if people are watching, would you want to watch that back? And I start by saying that because my spouse said something to me, like, even, I think it was like not even that long ago. He looked at me and he goes, I wish I had a camera on you for that. And I said, why? He goes, because you wouldn't like what you just saw. And I said, really? I said, was I that bad? Because I have these moments sometimes, very infrequently, but when I haven't slept well, things are going a little chaotic. I'm having maybe a few triggers and symptoms, like TBI symptoms, and I crack, right? I respond. And there's no excuse to respond to your spouse unkindly, no matter what's going on in your life. But it's learned behavior from being in a household that just screamed instead of talk. So I'm working on my shit. I acknowledge childhood things, but I also sit there and I say, like, hold me accountable. Hold me accountable for my shit. And if I say something, you need to stop it in its tracks, because that's not acceptable behavior. Most people don't want that, though. Most people don't want someone to call them out on their shit. So act accordingly. Act as if someone is following you around. Would you want the world to see that? And it's not about, I need the world's approval. It's like, that will never leave. The internet is here. Your children will be able to find that. And that, what he just witnessed, is like a TV for him. If he sees that mommy's okay acting that way and treating somebody else that way, he's going to treat others that way. That is just a reflection. Your energy to little ones is everything. It is all things, man. It's just,
I had a feeling that this conversation was going to go this way, and I'm so glad that it did. It's just, I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more. I get asked that all the time. Like, what is it like to be a father? And I say, you know what? I just decided that I'm going to make every decision, every approach, every situation as if my daughter was watching me, as if this was the opportunity to show up and set the example for how would I want her to see me in this situation respond. And do I do great 100% of the time? Absolutely not. But if I can use that as a filter, then I can become more of the person that it is that I want to be. And I also want her to see. There's this idea that I actually said this to somebody I'm mentoring recently. I asked him, I said, what does it mean to take full responsibility for your life? And he goes, you know, I have this responsibility, this responsibility. This. I said, yeah, you have a lot of responsibility. I get that. But that's not what I'm asking. I'm saying, what does it mean to take full responsibility for your life? As in, everything that you see around you everything that is your life, it's 100% your responsibility, whether it's good or whether it's bad. If you can start to live life that way, whether it be you have that sounding board that is your daughter, or, somebody watching you on the other side, you have to have that piece. You have to have that touchstone that is, okay, ultimate responsibility, complete ownership. Like, what does that truly mean? And it's completely different than saying I have a lot of responsibility. It's saying I take full responsibility for the good, and more importantly, the bad. And then what do you do with it?
Right.
That's when life becomes very beautiful and very hard, because when you take full responsibility, it becomes much harder. You say, well, this is all my fault. This is all my responsibility. This is going to be very hard, but it also shows you that you're a little bit more in control than you thought you were.
Yeah. And I think we can control our lives to an extent. I think we
Yeah.
have a path laid out for us, whether we choose for it or not. It's about how far down that path do you want to go? How much of that do you want to tweak? Like, if you're not happy down the path, are you choosing to change it? What does that mean to change it? Does that mean you move your whole family? Does that mean you flip your life upside down? What does that mean? And each level of that has its own complications and, stress around it. But I feel like I'm really grateful to psychedelics, because the one thing it showed me after the military was I already had like no fear of death, because I feel like at some level you can't if you're going to be focused on the mission at hand. And maybe some people are like, that's really silly, but I just didn't, right? Maybe I was just naive when I was young enough when I was there, but now I still don't have that fear of death, because I don't believe we die. I believe that decisions that we make will inform what happens to us next to some degree. I don't mean heaven and hell. I mean how we die, maybe. Or do we get to live a long life in this meat body? But this isn't it. And to act as if this is it blows my mind. We have to, the time that we have here is so finite, so small, such a sliver. I just had this conversation with Trey Ratcliffe yesterday, and he's a big psychedelic user, and we were going back and forth about it. I said, dude, it's like a blink. We blink. This is it. This is all this is. And if we started treating this life like that, could you imagine?
And brought to you by Daisy May Hat Co., the custom hat company based in Nashville, Tennessee. They make custom one-of-a-kind hats, from wide-brimmed fedoras to cowboy hats. All of their hats are 100% beaver felt, and it's the highest quality hat you can get. They also have the coolest shirts ever. You can use the code BRASS at checkout for 15% off your entire order. Go and check out daisymayhats.com. Embrace the fever. Live the dream.
Could you imagine where we would be right now? And the people and the things that would be happening and the goals. I wake up every morning, doesn't matter how tired I am, ruthlessly excited. Like, to the point where it's like, I need you to get to school. Like, I'm excited. I got an idea. I need to get it down. Let's go. We got things to do. Right. And it's not like anxiety. It's like, I have a million ideas and I want to execute, and I love you. And we're going to do this. We're going to do this tomorrow, and we're going to do it together. But we need to go to school right now so I can get this out, because I want my son to see, and I want those around me to see, shit can happen. Life can be difficult, but you can choose your next steps. And I just choose for my next steps to be impossibly difficult for people to reach. I'm going to shoot so far into the galaxy and where I want to land that even if I get a quarter of that, damn, son, that's it. That's all you got to do. You got to reach. And I want my son. So when I say you can do anything, I look at him honestly, bro, we're both like 5 foot and 5'6". You're probably not going to be in the NBA. Let me just make that incredibly clear for you. Like, I'll get you all the lessons. It's not going to work out for you. But you know what you would be good at? You know what you could be good at? Let's get into jujitsu. Don't like that? Let's do parkour. You want to do soccer? Let's try that. You want to sit down and write? Do you want to create a YouTube page? Do you want to become an artist? He comes to the warehouse and ships orders. Like, make your kids a part of your life and show them that not just say you can do anything you want to do. Show them that they can do it. Show them how to do it. Give them the tools to do it. Give them the best start you can. And that starts with your nutrition. That starts with your sleep habits. That starts with making them move. And that starts with you as an adult being the example, being accountable, and showing up. That's how you get it done.
That's a serious mic drop there, right there. And that's one of the big problems is like, there's a lot of intellectual people. A lot of people are really smart, but it doesn't matter what you can say. It matters what you do. And that's, at the end of the day, ultimately the thing is that's going to get the life that it is you want. And time is ticking. Like time is ticking.
So fast. And our time has already gone. That's how quick that
So
went.
quickly.
So
That was
quickly, man.
That was so good, Kelsey. I honestly, I love this conversation. I know we could probably go for hours, but thank you. Like, thank you for what you're doing in this world. I really appreciate our connection, and just this conversation was awesome.
Yeah, man, you're welcome on any time. You don't have to have anything to talk about. We can just talk. I think that's what's great. People love to see these conversations. They love to hear them. They love to pull pieces from them and start implementing them to their lives. So I'm grateful for your time. I'm grateful for this back and forth. We've tried to get ourselves locked in together. And I'm grateful for your company, because you are not trying to be somebody that band-aids the world. You're trying to be somebody that genuinely changes the world. And I cannot see why it's not going to happen and continue to happen for you.
Thank you. Deeply appreciate that.
No worries, my friend. Where can everyone find you? Go grab these products. Where can everyone support you?
Yeah. So big tech loves us. You got to type out Cured Nutrition, the whole thing. Because if you don't type out Cured Nutrition, you're not going to find us on Instagram. We are heavily shadow banned, but Cured Nutrition on Instagram, curednutrition.com. You can find me on my Instagram, JOSEPHSHEEHEY. Feel free to reach out, ask me any questions. And if you go to curednutrition.com, you can use BRASS at checkout for 20% off for all the lovely listeners of the podcast. We appreciate you all. And again, Kelsey, just thank you for having me on. This was awesome.
No worries, man. You stick with me. Everyone else, we'll put it in the show notes. We'll see y'all next week.